Hi, I'm Kara, life coach, wife, and mom to 4 incredible and unique children. It wasn't all that long ago that my son received a diagnosis that had my world come crashing down. I lacked the ability to see past the circumstances, which felt impossible, and the dreams I once had for my life and family felt destroyed. Fast forward past many years of surviving and not at all thriving, and you'll see a mom who trusts that she can handle anything that comes her way and has access to the power and confidence that once felt so lacking. I created the Special Needs Mom podcast to create connection and community with moms who find themselves feeling trapped and with no one who really understands. My intention is to spark the flare of possibility in your own life and rekindle your ability to dream. This isn't a podcast about your special needs child. This is a podcast about you. If you are a mom who feels anxious, alone, or stuck, then you are in the right place. Welcome. Hello and welcome to the Special Needs Mom podcast. We're back today with a part 2 episode that follows last week's conversation. You're going to hear my co-host Brittney Crabtree from Moms Talk Autism here with me in this episode. And specifically, we're talking about when our children have behaviors that include physical, verbal, any type of aggression towards themselves, things, or others. I do recommend listening to the first episode, we broke it up into 2 logistical parts. So I do recommend going back to listen to that first and then revisiting this one. But if you like to break the rules, if you're like, don't tell me what to do, I'm here for you too. Welcome. Listen on. Okay. So this being the part 2 of the episode, we're essentially answering the question, what now? So it's normal for us. After we normalize that our children have these behaviors, that they can behave in these ways, what and how do we cope? So I think we say it in the episode, but this really is just the tip of the iceberg. We are just providing a very small framework to orient you towards the work that is available for us special needs moms to do. And rather than letting the clutches of perfectionism grip me into submission and to not releasing this episode because it doesn't have everything that I want to say and, do about this particular topic, we're going to just do what we can. And we're going to start with this singular conversation with myself and Brittney, and we're going to just let it be enough for right now. So with that, let's get into the episode. Welcome to the Special Needs Mom podcast and
Moms Talk Autism
She's
podcast.
Like,
what am I supposed to say? What? No.
The pointing, that was like your cue. No.
Sorry.
Well,
Already
we are here. This is Brittney and Kara. We are here joyfully to talk about a not very joyful topic, but I approached Brittney and saying, hey, I want to talk about this topic. And I think this would be well served having more than one voice, particularly your voice. And yes, we brainstormed about, expanding beyond that. But you know what? We only have so much bringing things together capacity with everything else. So here we are as I started this conversation. So let's start with talking a little bit about who we are, both as individuals, but also you're here representing Moms Talk Autism.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear about both parts of your life there.
Awesome. Yeah. So my name's Brittney. Once again, I live in Northern California. I have 4 kids, 3 boys, ages 21, 18, and 17. Boom, boom, boom. I don't remember a lot of that time when they were super young. Just I go by pictures, in old videos mostly. And then we had a little break, and then we have our little girl who is 11. So yeah, my husband and I have been married for 23 years, which is crazy. And 2 of my kids are on the autism spectrum, and they are on completely opposite ends of the spectrum, which makes it interesting. And I'm sure we'll talk about that maybe a little bit. But my 18-year-old Austin is non-speaking. He's what would be considered profound or very severe. And we'll talk about what that means as well. And he has a lot of behaviors. He requires 24/7 supervision. He's not potty trained, just kind of to give you an idea in your head, listener, what that kind of looks like for us. He's bigger and taller and stronger than me. He's 18. So And then our 11-year-old has autism as well. She is considered more of the mild to mod on that spectrum. She attends a general education, elementary school with supports from her special needs class. So she kind of like has one foot in each world, I guess, in some ways. And there's some things that she can participate in fully, as a typical little 11-year-old girl. And then there's some things where she needs a lot of support. And so we just kind of have to individualize that plan for her, which is, the whole point of those IEPs.
Yeah, well said. And Moms Talk Autism. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I am with 3 other amazing co-hosts. We host the Moms Talk Autism podcast. We have met with Kara a few years ago. We've done some podcast swapping. We've been guests on each other's before. And you're one of our favorites. I'm not supposed to say I have favorites, but you are. And we get together and we just talk about everything. We all live in a different state. We all have different age kids, different genders, different, capabilities and challenges with our children. We all have neurotypical and neurodivergent kids. So we have a mix of both in all of our families and different situations too. Some of us have been single parents, some of us have been divorced, some of us have been married the whole time, some of us, all sorts of different walks of life. And we try to have different guests on too, maybe with some of those holes and things that we haven't experienced personally. We'll have another parent or caregiver on or professional on to talk about specific things. So if you love Kara's content, you're probably going to like our stuff too, and vice versa.
It's a good plug. Yes. And I think it's so cool that the 4 of you ladies have come together. And like you said, you have a lot of common experiences, but then also you each have your individual experiences that bring such a robust perspective to your show. And you have different characters, different.
For sure. Strong personalities.
Thank you. On different shows.
Yeah.
On different episodes, I should say. And, the result is an amazing podcast. So yes, we'll have the link in the show notes and on my show. And of course, when listeners listen to you, they'll already be listening to your show. So come over and check out the Special Needs Mom podcast.
Please. Yes.
So let me tell you a little bit about myself, Kara. Let's see. Actually, as of about 2 years ago, we also have an ASD, an autism spectrum disorder diagnosis. We worked very hard to get that one and add it to our long list of diagnoses.
Congrats.
Thank you. Genuinely thank you, because it has been a gateway into profound support, especially in the state of California. So I not to diminish the impact of autism for so many of us, but we were already living with the experience that we were having. So to add on a diagnosis that literally meant no difference for us besides the support, it was a huge, huge, huge celebration. So Levi is a brain tumor survivor. So he had a brain tumor when he was 2 and again when he was 12. And so we have done the cancer experience multiple times. So we have, you were kind of saying you have a foot in different autism doors and of course neurotypical doors, same as I have 4 children and 3 of my children are neurotypical. I'm just like you, where I have 3 boys and then a little break and my daughter.
Yay.
I think we're both stubborn.
Yes. Wanted that one at the end.
Yes, I was so I was pregnant with my 3rd son when Levi was diagnosed. So I was already for 3, needed to take a breather. But I was like, I'm not letting this steal my dream of having 4 children. And I'm so glad that I did not. So as I was saying, Levi has a long list of diagnoses, all of them stemming from the impact of the tumor and the impact of the treatments that he has received. So wonderful that we were able to save his life. And it's very common for survivors of his tumor to have a very, what we say in our tumor community is a very low quality of life. So, the topic we're talking about today, I think, is something that I experienced before I understood exactly what I was experiencing. So we'll get into a little bit more of that later, but what else do I want to say about myself? Yeah. So I live in sunny Southern California in San Diego. And I already mentioned, I have these 4 darling children. I podcast full time and I run the Pathway to Peace coaching community. And I also have been married for 20 plus years. I think we're going on 22 in January. So
nice.
Just behind you, just a little whisper behind you. And I think that's a sufficient introduction. And before we dive into the topic, let's talk about who this episode may be for and who it may not be for.
Yes.
There's actually one caveat I want to put in, kind of more related to the listeners that may have come from my show. And that is, some of you, your children are not mobile. They're not able to get up out of their chair and or assistive devices. And so you may think, well, this episode is not for me. And I would say, well, consider that it might still be. So we're talking about physical aggression today. And it's very likely that even if you don't have the exact experience, there's something in your life that you're experiencing that falls under this umbrella of deeply misunderstood, deeply confronting, hard to be with. And so listen through the lens of, how does this relate to you? How does the experience that Brittney and I are talking about today, how does it help you feel seen, to have us highlight this aspect of part of our lives that we both experience and have in common? So that's what I wanted to say about that. But we also want to talk about a trigger warning that, we are going to be talking about extreme, in some case, physical aggression. And so I think sometimes I was thinking about this in advance of the episode. I was like, I feel like one of the survival techniques that you and I probably both do is like, we kind of laugh about what we experience of like, oh, I got smashed in the door again today.
Absolutely.
And that is okay.
Yeah.
And we don't mean to make light of what can be actually life-threatening.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're listening to this and you are currently in danger, as in you do not feel like you have what you need to stay safe, this is when you reach out to the people that can hopefully help with that. And I do say hopefully help with that because we all know there's gaping holes in our support systems.
Yes.
But I want to make sure that we acknowledge that this is something to be taken seriously and not to made light of, even though we will bring some levity to the conversation today. So what would you add to that, Brittney?
I would just say, yes, I think you covered things beautifully, but I would just say that although we can talk about this in more general terms and it can be taken as such, Kara can speak to Kara's experience and I can speak to mine. And that's really as far as our, quote, expertise goes in this particular field. There are things that you maybe can pull from this to your own experience, but we're not going to be able to talk about this in any kind of like professional, comprehensive way. Like we're not going to be able to cover all kinds of aggression in all kinds of situations. But this is just maybe going to give you a little taste and then help you maybe plant some seeds about how this applies to you and then maybe how it can help you.
Thank you for putting that in there. Yeah, we are not coming as subject matter experts. We are coming as moms with a lived experience that we want to share, because our goal for this episode is for you to be validated in your experience, for us to normalize this experience that you might be having, and to kind of maybe,
I would say educate maybe a little bit, too.
Yeah. Right.
Like, I have no idea what this is like. What would it be like? Well, here you go.
Yes. Okay. So with that, I think back to a wondering in my head that it's funny. I remember exactly where I was when I was driving, when I had this like thought of like, oh my gosh, if I were to tell somebody the experience I was having at home, from remove the personalities, but to say what was happening in terms of things are being thrown at me. So that's some physical. I'm being cussed out regularly and being called names. And I'm being shut indoors or hit. What would they scream at me? They would say, oh my gosh, you've got to leave, Kara. You have got to go. This is not okay. And they would, that would be the normal and almost acceptable response. But then when I say, oh, but it's my son and I'm his mother, it kind of, what do we do with that? Right. So that's kind of, I had this awareness, and I think it presents, I don't know, a little bit of a like, huh.
And not even that it's your son, but it's your disabled son.
Yes.
I mean, an adult child could be physically abusive to someone in their home, and there could be reasons why you would need to leave, and you should leave. But in this particular instance, there's even another layer, a very, very important layer on that, where my son cannot take care of himself in any way or shape or form, like physically or mentally or anything. And I don't necessarily think that he is culpable or responsible for his physical actions. Now, that's something we can, dive into maybe later, but there are many, many instances with my son where I don't think he is even aware of what he is doing. And that's very, very different than someone who has the intent to harm someone.
Let's stay there for a second, because I find this to be one of the hardest aspects as I look to advocate for my son and to help him be in the world. So I would say at this time, are at a more mild end as it relates to violence, explosiveness. We are able to go out into the world in terms of, I'm not worried that we're going to be in situations where we can't handle. Do I have to be on the I have to do a lot of pre-gaming to make sure I put my son in situations that where I know where he will come against some things where we could easily have some explosions. But we're pretty good at knowing what those things are. And for us, they're, I'd say, almost 100% food related. So, yeah, more on that later. But so where was I going with this? I was going to go with culpable. Okay. So I think in knowing when our children are to be held accountable for their actions and whether it's a parenting moment versus whether it's a moment where we just move on and accept what is, I find this to be, oh my gosh, it is the hardest aspect I find of this part of being a special needs mom. What is your experience in this area?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And it's very true. And it can be applied to many different kinds of situations. How much of this is something that we need to maybe treat the behavior as opposed to maybe we need to parent? Like, do I need to be a caregiver or do I need to be a parent in this situation? Maybe that's the simplest way to say it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do I need to care for this person and help them work through this sensory issue or this aggressive, episode? Or do I need to try to teach them something? In the case of my son, who's 18 and has an intellectual disability, has profound autism, and has very, very limited communication, more often than not, we are on the caregiving side of that. It is very, very rare where I'm doing the teaching. And in some ways, kind of like how you were talking about people, family members who are maybe immobile and maybe don't have the same kind of quote behaviors or aggression that we do. There is there's almost like a silver lining to how incredibly obvious it is, how disabled my son is and how obvious it is to other people around us and to anyone who comes in contact with. You're going to see Austin, and within less than a minute, you're going to know that he has some kind of disability. And that makes it very clear and very easy to maybe be understanding or to offer help or to clear away or to, give some kind of grace or space for that in public or, if you're just meeting someone for the first time. Whereas maybe someone more like my daughter or your son, there's maybe a little bit more of a gray area where they can communicate a little bit. They maybe seem like they're, quote, typical or normal, or like you're trying to assess the situation for a longer period of time as to, okay, what am I dealing with here? Am I dealing with a snotty, spoiled kid who's just screaming about getting their way? Or are we dealing with like a sensory disability or intellectual problem here? And that's where having maybe a child who's higher functioning might be a little bit more difficult. So,
yeah, I'll speak to a little bit my experience too. And what I've noticed over the years, so Levi is 16 now. And I think that when he was younger, it was less apparent that he was disabled.
Yes.
And so now in the older years, I think it is more apparent.
Yeah,
and
the gap is bigger.
That is a little bit of a silver lining, because I do think that it helps us caregivers trust that other people won't be judging us to the level that we fear that they would without it.
Correct.
It kind of gives us that like space to know that like they know that this is not like
I don't have to explain it to you. You can figure it out on your own. Yeah.
Like read the room. Here's back to what you said about, I love the way that you distinguish in terms of like how we handle this part of, do we hold them accountable and do we hold them culpable? What I find in our experience is that because I know Levi and his dad knows him obviously better than anybody else. And because he is highly capable in a lot of areas, he's very, very intellectually savvy, which again gets us in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, maybe
too good, right? So he's brilliant at working around the support structures we put in for him.
Love that.
But that school leans towards the teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, we even had an instance where there was something that had happened that had affected some other people in terms of it caused a little bit of a mess. And the automatic solution from the school administrator was to have Levi apologize to the person impacted.
Mm-hmm.
And I had real strong feelings about that because I'm like, wait, are we asking him to, I would say, I believe he understood the actions that he was taking. Do I think he was able to not take those actions? No, I don't. I don't think that he has the ability to process his emotions in the way that he needs to not act out in the way that he does.
Yeah.
And so to ask somebody to apologize for something that they actually don't have agency over, that doesn't feel good to me.
Right.
So I actually wrote an email to the school with my initial response. And again, this is an area where I start to feel insecure a lot of times because I'm like, am I the mom that's like evading responsibility for my son?
Right.
And enabling him? Or am I like right to defend him and advocate for him? So I ran it through chat. I said, I want an unbiased third party. And I told it my concerns. And I don't know about your chat GDP, but mine is so affirming. It's like, great question, Kara.
You're just like, well, thank you.
It's so good of you to ask. I'm like, well, I mean, no, truly. I'm like, it really has me wrapped around its finger. But it was validating. It was like, no, like, great point. And I loved where it went with it. It went basically it suggested perhaps rather than apologizing for the action, he could express gratitude for the support. And I was like, boom, that is brilliant. Because
that works.
That is genuine for him. I'm okay with teaching him to acknowledge people that are supporting him and to recognize there is an impact, right? And we don't have to feel guilty or shame about that, but we can acknowledge that at a human level. So it's a little bit of a tangent, but I think it's worth kind of highlighting this part where, just the challenge. I mean, we don't have necessarily solutions here, but recognize and validating the challenge of not knowing where to land in terms of this caregiving versus parenting and teaching role.
And I will say just very quickly that is a cognitive load that is not spoken of often. And it is something that you need to be maybe aware of. And if that's happening to you and you're just feeling so overwhelmed, maybe that's why. Because not only are you trying to be a good parent, you're trying to be a good caregiver, and you're trying to figure out which one you need to be in that moment. And that's really, really hard to do. And it requires time and experience and messing up. You're going to make mistakes. You're not going to get it right every time. I certainly don't. We've been doing this for many, many years, you and I still make mistakes. And I look back and I'm like, oh, maybe I should have been a little bit more of a parent in that situation. Mm-hmm. I mean, we don't expect typical parents to get everything right. And as a, parent of disabled children, you're not going to get everything right either. So just trust your gut and keep practicing. It's a muscle. It's something that you'll build up and you'll get better and stronger at as you go. And you'll grow with your child as these situations come up for you.
Great point. And I think it's one of the reasons why we wanted to talk about this, right? Is recognizing the load that these unanswerable questions have on us, particularly when something has so much stigma as violence.
Yes.
And I wonder if we go back to lay a little bit more of a foundation to back up a little bit and just to kind of talk about what specifically are we talking about? Like, what does violence in the home look like? I mentioned a couple of things earlier, but I guess if you were to give somebody a picture of what you hear from your community, of course, pull from your own experience if you'd like to, but like, what does it look like for you?
Yeah. So I kind of divided it into 3 separate categories when I explain it to people, just kind of giving a blanket idea of what my house looks like. There is violence against property damage. So there's that kind of violence where it doesn't involve necessarily another person, but things get damaged in my house. That happens often in my home. There is violence towards other people. Whether that is, it's typically in my house, it's towards myself or my husband, sometimes his brothers a little bit. All 3 of the boys are about the same size, same weight, same everything. So it's kind of an even match, if you say.
Uh-huh.
So they can defend themselves, my two typical boys, and they know kind of what to do. We've done training and talked to them extensively through the years, and they kind of know now. And then there's violence against yourself. There's self violence, hurting himself. We have all three of those things in our home, and it fluctuates one way or the other between those three. I can have all three in one episode, or we can really be kind of focused on one thing with him at a time. And it just depends. It depends on the situation. And all three of those can also present themselves in public. And where it becomes really, really scary and unsafe is when we're having violence towards other people in public. And that's where it's really, really difficult for us to maybe be around, be part of the community if we're having a lot of violence towards other people, for a particular amount of time.
Yeah. And I think what I'll add in terms of, I'd say we have a lot of the same, a lot less of the self-injurious aspect of it with some exception. But I think what I would add is we have what I would call verbal violence.
Thank you.
Obviously, that's not going to be part of your profile.
That's not part of mine, but yes.
In your experience. And so there's a lot of words that come out of my son's mouth. And it is actually so interesting. You talked about Austin. You're like, I don't even think he knows what he's doing. If I were to tell people that know Levi the things that he has said in these moments, I don't think anyone would believe me. Because it is so out of character with who he is, which also tells me this isn't who he is. This is what's happening. This is how he's communicating and all he knows how to do at this time.
Yeah.
And anyhow, I just think it's so interesting.
I would say the same thing applies to Austin when he is trying to hit me. I don't think that's not who he is as a person. It's not. If I had to create a visual, I would say it's like there's a bar, right? I'm doing a horizontal line. And once we get past that bar, we're above it. It's like a bull seeing red, in a china shop or whatever visual you want to say. Like he is not present. He is not there. He is not culpable. He is not really understanding. He is in some kind of other state of mind where I don't even think he knows where his body is or what his body is doing. And that doesn't mean that he's just flailing around and not, he's not trying to target. Like he's looking and trying to hit something in particular. But I don't think he is connecting what his body is doing to what his brain wants him to do. And there's a variety of different ways that I've maybe kind of figured that out because he can't tell me. And I can talk about those, but just, verbal or physical, I think that situation applies to both. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think Levi learned the language when he was little of flipping his lid. And actually, I think this might have come in from zones of regulation, which is kind of a ABA based and kind of, I think is maybe more prevalent in the kind of behavioral education kind of settings. Yeah, I think very much that, when any of us are escalated beyond, at a certain level, our frontal lobe turns off. It's like, it's not needed in the fight or flight of life. And so I think that this just happens to our children, I think at a more profound level.
Yeah.
And I think also my son has a lot less inhibitions. So he's already very impulsive in nature. And so we add these two together and we get these extreme expressions.
A perfect recipe. Yeah.
Perfect recipe. And let's talk a little bit about the why. And I think this is important for you, especially you were just talking about, being out in public and where some of this starts to occur. And I know communication for you in terms of your experience with Austin is a lot different. I can talk to Levi and not always get an understanding of where he's at, but I can still have conversations with it, which is obviously very different than not being able to have conversations. And so how do you see the lack of communication and the relationship to the expressions that Austin will have?
The lack of communication is a huge, huge struggle and challenge. It's the number one challenge for him having behaviors, being able to be in public, his aggression, his frustration. I also, not only do you have to discern whether I should be a caregiver or a parent, then you have to discern, is he present? Is he accountable for these actions and whatever it is, throwing bark on the slide or stomping around or taking his clothes off or trying to take all the leaves off the tree or trying to hit me, coming at me, right? All those things. I have to discern, okay, is he really here with me, or are we just, I'm not going to be able to like reach him with eye contact or whatever it is. All of that together. I have to make those decisions in a split second sometimes. And it's difficult, like I said, and you have to have experience and it takes time to build that up. And then you also I have to then communicate for him in some ways. I always presume competence. I always assume, even though I don't necessarily think it's always the case, I always assume that he can understand me. I think that's appropriate and correct considering his age, that I'd rather assume and have him maybe, overshoot that than assume he doesn't know things and treat him like a little child. So I try to approach it that way. And then I will speak for me, and then I will try to answer in a way that I think he would want me to. And I have a two-way conversation kind of with myself. I mean, I'm looking at him and I'm like, hey, are you feeling overwhelmed right now? And he'll say, yes, Mom, I feel my body is really like out of control right now. I think we need to go to the car. And then I'll say, okay, do you want to go to the car? And I try to like speak for him in a way that I think would be appropriate. And sometimes I do it correctly. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I can see a spark in his eye because he's realizing, okay, yeah, that is what I want. And then I try to act on that immediately. You have to be very, very aware and super hyper vigilant if you're going to use that kind of model. And it is not always successful. I just want to be very, very clear on that. But it's the only way I can find in those heightened emotional moments or aggressive moments where I feel like I can kind of reach him in any way. And sometimes I know that's not going to work and we just have to ride it out. And there's nothing I can do except wait. And that's when it's really, really hard. Those are the worst ones, of course. I have a recent experience. My husband took Austin and the boys up camping one night with some very dear friends, people who knew us well and knew Austin well. And someone had their father-in-law come, and he kind of knew us, but didn't spend a ton of time with us. He knew Austin. And he would watch my husband. Austin was wandering around and kicking dirt and playing with rocks and, just messing around at the campsite. And this father-in-law was watching my husband, and he says, you never take your eyes off him, do you? You were always watching. You are so hypervigilant and watching every single little thing he does. And we don't even realize we do it anymore. When I go to the park, I am not on my phone scrolling around. I am constantly watching him for all of those many reasons. It's for his safety and everyone else's safety. And so that's a huge part of the lack of communication, is the amount of safety vigilance that I have to then kind of cover and take care of. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we're going to do a 2-part episode. In the next episode, we're going to talk about the impact of that in terms of us as caregivers. But yeah, I mean, as I'm listening to essentially the strategies that you've developed, it's like you're doing the communication for both of you. And that's a lot higher gradient than it is just just communicating for ourselves.
It's difficult.
What we're feeling at any given moment, like that's already like, we don't always get it right. So trying to step in, and it's just really, I want to acknowledge you for the beauty in what you described and in being tuned in with him, into trying to give him words or mirror back what you think he's experiencing. And like you said, sometimes getting it right and sometimes not, but just kind of a beautiful picture of you being his both mother and caregiver. So, we're talking about these things happening in our homes and out, and people see. And
they sure do.
They sure do. And I think when I had approached you, I had an experience. We were at a graduation party over the summer, and I said, it's funny. Levi does not really move unless he has a very good reason to.
Okay.
Usually that reason is food related. And so I saw him get up like you, I was at this party doing the party thing, talking to my friends, but my eyes were still on him in terms of my awareness into him. It was like really,
there's always part of my brain that is always watching him. Yeah.
So I saw him get up, and I was like, oh boy. And I saw him making a beeline for the bonfire, which had s'mores. And
nice.
I was like, okay. And this was already after a lot of other food related. It wasn't going well. Let's just put it that way. And so I said, all right, I've got to curtail this. And so I got to get to him before he sits down, because if he sits down, I will not be getting him back up.
See, and that's that experience that I'm talking about. You knew this is the trigger. This is the point. If I can't get at this beforehand, then things are going to escalate very, very quickly. Yep.
They will.
Yep.
And so I did intercept so he didn't get to the seat. And in which case, I'm talking to him, talking him through it and saying, I need you to come over this way, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He did not like this. And so he hit me. And it hurt, actually. That one hurt. He got me good. And so I'm like having this experience supporting him, but I'm also aware of like people are watching this go down.
Yep.
Maybe not. But I mean, in my mind, I thought they could be. And so the episode title that came into my mind, maybe not right away, was Getting Punched at Parties. And I just thought it kind of made me laugh, right? Because this is the real life experience that we're having. But actually, it's interesting because years ago, I probably would have had a lot of, I don't know, I would have felt like, what are they thinking, et cetera, et cetera. There might have been some drama in my mind. Whereas I was thinking, wow, my friends must be in awe that I can handle getting hit several times and stay calm and show up for Levi and not have it even be a thing, And so I think I was also proud of myself in the moment that I knew how to support him and that I didn't also let the fear of what other people would think change the way that I showed up for him and what he needed. And, in that moment, did he say, yes, Mom, I need your help? No, he did not. But overall, the picture was I was doing what was best for him. Right. So, but I want to talk about this, and I share that particular story because I want to talk about social reactions and shame. And so there's kind of two aspects of this. There's just the experiences that we're describing, whether we're at the park or camping or at a party. People are seeing what's going down. And have you, I don't know, can you pull from any stories that anything come to mind in terms of what kind of reactions you've gotten out in the world?
Oh, I've gotten the full gamut. I mean, I could give you examples from one extreme to the next. I've had people scream at me and yell at me for what my child has done. That was probably the worst one. And I must say, I did not react appropriately and maybe yelled back a little bit. So, it is what it is. I have not done that since, so I've learned.
I understand it might not be the appropriate response or the most evolved response, but there's the part of me that's glad that you did.
Yeah, well, she kind of had it coming a little bit, and she was being a terrible example to her children. But anyway, we got through that one. That was a pivotal moment for me, and I realized in that moment that maybe I need to think about this a little ahead of time. If someone does this again, I need to maybe have a little bit of a game plan. And since then, I have been able to do that. I've also had the exact opposite where we were having an extreme physical altercation. My son was strapped into one of those Caroline carts, so he could not get out, but he was doing everything he could to hurt me while I was trying to push him out of the store. And I had everyone from staring at me. I think I had one person who started videoing me, which was not appropriate for them to do. It's a complete stranger, but I was too
you were in the zone.
All I could see was like tunnel vision to head to that door. Right. And then I also had people coming up to me, two different women in that particular, it's always the women, guys, the other moms who come up and they were like looking me in the face and saying, do you need help? Let me help you. And being able to use them to help me get my child out to the car, get him into the car safely, not run away in the parking lot, and then able to then return my cart full of food that I had not paid for back into the store. So it was a whole thing. We can go from one extreme to people being very angry and aggressive towards me and the opposite of helpful versus being very, very helpful and very understanding without me having to say a word. And then there's everything, everything in between. I've even had people, I've had a child, Austin was, we're at a park and there was a coach there getting set up to run some drills. I think it was soccer balls or volleyballs or something. And no one else was there yet. He was there a little early setting up, and Austin was messing around and he went over and grabbed a ball, and I was, oh, no, don't touch that stuff. He's trying to set it up and things. And I turned to the coach and I said, I'm sorry, he's autistic. He doesn't understand. And he just looked at me. He goes, I know. I was like,
a good way? Was that?
I think he meant it in a good way, but it kind of came across a little condescending, like, duh, I can tell, lady, I was just like, well, I have to assume that you don't know, maybe. Like, I don't know. He was right? Like 8 or 9 years old. Who knows what you're thinking? And I hadn't spoken to you yet. I didn't know. Anyway, it was fine. Like, I don't take offense to that. This is another thing that you will develop over time, as long as your muscles of discernment is your little tough skin. You'll get a nice little layer on you with people around and their judgments maybe and their perspectives of you. But yeah, I love to reach a place where you could be in a public place, have your child be violent toward you, and you walk away, Kara, and say, I'm so proud of myself for the way I handled that. That's the goal. Okay. That's great. Because we may not be able to change the behaviors, but you could change your reaction to it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it didn't come overnight, right? Like this is years of practice. And, by no means have I arrived, because do I experience that every single time? No, I do not.
No.
And I know you same, right? But I feel like I look back over the years, and actually one thing I will mention, because I think it's important, is that we got a medication in 2021 that is pivotal, has been pivotal in toning down the volume of the explosions. I would say the frequency.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how we would be doing it if we did not have this particular medication. And so what's interesting is, even though in some ways a lot of things have gotten more challenging, particularly we have a lot more mass behind Levi. He's got a large stature, if you will.
Yeah.
And so with that addition, if we had not toned down the volume, I don't know how we would be doing this, but I'm sure you do.
Well, that's great that you've found one that worked. I would say we have made significant progress, but we have not found that magic sauce that we call it, the cocktail, the medication cocktail of all the different things he takes for a variety of reasons to find that sweet spot yet. I think we're getting closer. And I think some of that also has to do with maturity, maybe the end of that pubescent stage where you're going through all those like major hormonal changes. I think that is also, it's not just, it's never just one thing, guys. It's never just one thing. But yeah, to find that place, or at least what's working for now, it might change for you, but to have that for now, that's wonderful. That's really, really great.
Yes. And thank you. And I think, though, I look at my evolution and I see that even before we got that relief, if you will, I feel like I had to grapple with, how do I be in public when actually, and I have this very clear memory of, I was dropping Levi off to school and we have kind of a curb we pull up on, and I was getting him out and he was upset about something. I don't know what it was, but I do remember him trying to smash me in the car door. Mm-hmm. Like, so I was like,
he was trying to close the door on you?
He was trying to close the door on me. So if you just picture me kind of just getting smushed in the door, I was still standing up. And then a mom I knew and really respect, like walking by. And I remember just thinking, and actually it's kind of a beautiful thing because she's really a gracious mom. And I think it actually gave me a little bit of access to kind of maybe have that shift of like, she's not judging me. Mm-hmm. She saw this thing. I don't have to like feel bad about it.
No,
I don't know. Like, I feel like it was like this kind of a pivotal moment because I remember this so clearly in my mind thinking, oh, wow, this must be quite a sight. But it kind of being kind of the start of me being able to kind of have less energy about these things happening. So those are the social reactions kind of from the community at large, both in our home and out of our home. Mm. And we haven't even touched on the siblings yet. We may or may not get to that. Oh, yeah.
That's a whole episode right there.
I know.
But
I want to turn to talk a little bit about what we'll call the professionals. Okay. And I'm putting that in quotes because I say that, I guess, with a little bit of, I don't even know, incompletion behind it, because I have personally had the experience of, it was with a therapist, not my current therapist, for this being one of the reasons. I remember talking to her about what we were experiencing. And I remember the shift, like she stepped out of like that space of being a therapist and holding space for me. And she stepped into what her experience was, which I don't know, but I'm guessing is this isn't okay. I have to fix this. Mm-hmm. It was almost like she stepped into the role of, and because she started giving me all sorts of, have you tried this? Have you tried that? Like, Kara, this isn't okay.
Yes.
And It's like, well, I understand it's not okay, but it is.
That's not the problem here. Yeah.
Yeah. We will not be fixing this. You will not be fixing this in this conversation. There is no solution for this problem.
Right.
Yes, there's avenues for support and help and learning. And I believe that we're going to explore that in the second episode is like, what do we do about this? But it was so distinctly like, oh, this is where it's beyond what she's comfortable being with because it's so unique. Like I probably never in her professional experience has she experienced one of her clients being in what I'll put in quotes as abusive relationship,
Yeah.
but also a relationship she's not willing to get out of.
Right.
And for all the reasons we've talked about earlier. So I know you've had some similar, you don't have to go into the details, but I wanted to kind of put this in there as like something that you might be experiencing, you to the listener, that not every professional knows how to hold space for this particular aspect of our caregiving life.
Yes. I think that's so huge and important to remember as you are searching for maybe your own mental health or physical health that you need, but also for your child. There's a full gamut of reactions I've had from professionals as well. Many of them are very professional and they are able to offer a lot of help. Like they can figure out what the problem is and they can offer me solutions to this problem. That's great. But whether it's a medication or a therapy or a certain thing that I need to do with his body to help him with this thing, that's great. I'm so glad we figured out what it is. How do I do that? It's the execution of you found the solution. That's wonderful. How do I execute that with this person who is bigger, taller, stronger than I am, has a propensity for aggression, and cannot speak or understand what I'm trying to do? And they look at me and 99% of the time, they have no idea. And so then I am then left as the caregiver and parent to try to figure out how to execute this plan that I have been given by a professional. So to be able to kind of like separate those two things is helpful for me because I can usually find a solution to a problem or at least something to try. Like, well, have you tried this? Have you tried this? Have you tried? Great. I can't get that thing in his body. Like,
yes,
I literally
Love
can't
your idea.
get it in him.
And
so what do you want me to do about this? You got anything else? Can I give it to you? Do you have a liquid form? Do you have a da-da-da? Like we'll go through the full thing. And this is particularly prescient in my life because we are dealing with a lot of constipation issues. And so I know what the problem is. I know how to help someone who is constipated, but those solutions are not being able to be executed fully with someone who is unwilling and unable to understand why we are doing that. So if you can, there's so much we can go into that very graphically, but so that's part of it. And then I also have the professionals, like kind of more in your experience, whether it's a therapist or, a physical, medical, whether it was a neurologist or whoever it was, who I started explaining the problem to them or explaining my situation, my life, giving them a picture. I'm verbally like telling them what we go through every day and the violence or the aggression or whatever. And I can see their jaw becoming unhinged and falling to the floor as I talk to them. And I'm like, I have been able now, as an experienced caregiver and one who has many, many conversations with many professionals, to realize, okay, ding, you have absolutely no idea how to help me or have heard anything like this before in your life. And in a way, it kind of like it's gotten to the point now where it's kind of like, I've won the prize. Like I have become the most extreme example of whatever you think you know what to do about this. Like, get gold star for me. But you can also suss them out now. And you're like, okay, maybe you're not the person, or maybe you need to talk to somebody else who is, and then we could work together on this. But maybe I need to keep searching for somebody who has at least some kind of experience or some touchstone to what my situation is in this moment.
Totally. And I think it's like, so, and back to kind of the therapy in terms of like actually mental health therapy, I want to touch on that just for a second because well, I want to address what you just said and say, I'm sure that you, more than you even realize it, have certain ways of sharing your story with providers.
Oh, I've got a whole script. To like get the response so you can get to the point where you're like, can you or can you not help me? Yeah, I'm very efficient about it. Like I have a way, like I've been able, because I've said it so many times, I have a way to comprehensively give you a glimpse and then gauge your reaction pretty quickly. at this
Oh, I'm
point.
sure you're so. I would love to watch. I would love to witness that. It's like
we'll record it next time. Yeah.
Sorry, doctor. I'm just going to record this.
Yeah,
because my friend
this is for
Tara
research
would like to
purposes.
see.
Yeah.
I want to jump just to put this in there because my fear is that a lot of you will write off all therapists who do not have direct caregiving experiences.
Yes.
And I would say, let's not do that.
Right.
Let's not be so fast to do that. Yes, it can be profoundly valuable to have a therapist who does have caregiving experience or perhaps experience with, the type of violence that we're talking about. But don't let that be a make or break factor in finding a mental health therapist. I'm a huge believer. I mean, I'm a coach. So I coach.
Right.
I don't do therapy. And I believe that both have places and value. And so I would love to see more of us have amazing therapists. And so I want to just put in a note that just because someone doesn't have the direct experience doesn't mean they can't hold space for us and really support us in this work.
I completely agree with you. Some of the best therapists and ABA, RBTs, and people who have direct access to Austin are not parents themselves and have very, very little experience in the field, right? But they have been able to, it's a personality thing. It is an experience thing. It's training. It's a lot, it's their own childhood, whatever you want to say. There's a mixture of all those things that can make someone the perfect person to help you and support your child. And it's not always those who have the letters behind their name or who have had 10 years, working with children of your child's caliber or whatever. So I agree with that completely. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's see. Is there anything else we want to cover in this particular episode?
I guess maybe to wrap it up, I would just say if you're feeling very alone and very isolated and like no one else can understand or even comprehend what you're going through, it's not true. Now, is someone going to know exactly every little instance and every little nuance of your particular situation? Not necessarily, but there is a lot of overlap for many, many, many of us out there. And, even Kara and I have very, very different children in their capabilities and maybe even their expressions of aggression. But at the same time, there's so much overlap and there's so much that is in Kara's situation that applies to my situation and vice versa. And so there is a real validation and sense of compassion and a sense of connection that can come with speaking with other people who maybe are in a not the same, but similar experience to you. And I would highly, highly recommend maybe searching out those people. We'll talk about that more in detail in another episode, I think. But just kind of keep that in mind. That's what you're looking for. You're not looking for this person who's gone through the same exact thing you have, but maybe somebody who's gone through something that can relate to you in a particular way or in many particular ways. That's been the key for me.
So well said. And emphasizing, and I think this is what we're going to get to in episode number 2, is okay, this is our life. This is what we're experiencing. And so how are we going to support our children, our families, our relationships, and ourselves through this? And I think it starts with exactly what you just spoke to, and is not doing it alone, is recognizing that talking about it, connecting about it, giving language for the experience that you're having is going to be pivotal. Yes. And I'll speak to one episode I did recently, and I'll put in the show notes. I think I called it, let me look it up really quick.
While you're looking for that, I'll just say that piece of it, being able to connect and validate and hear other people's stories and share your own, is just as important as looking for some kind of practical solution. I think both of those pieces go hand in hand and are just as valid and just as important. I am never going to stop searching for solutions and ways for my son to communicate more effectively, for us to reduce his aggression, for him to be able to contribute and be a part of society more. I will never, ever give up on that. But I am also going to look for support and accept where we are right now and try to be happy and find ways for him to be happy and me to be happy and everyone to be able to live in some kind of harmonious way, despite these really, really scary and, hard challenges in our lives. Just keep that in mind. It's a lot. I know it's a lot. The cognitive load is so burdensome at times, but both of those pieces are just as important.
Oh, so well said. And I think part of the cognitive load, so I spoke to this in the episode called Nobody Else Has It This Hard, and it was released originally September 17th. And in it, I talk about a event that happened in our life, and I'm leaving the event vague, but it was a big one. It was a big one. It was public. It had a lot of long-term ramifications. I actually do think I shared it with you specifically.
Yeah. And I've had not the same thing, but similar things. Yep.
But what was so interesting in that, what I speak to in the episode, is that it would have been real easy for me to go down a real negative thought pattern. But I had met with somebody earlier that day that was going through something totally different. But they had the experience of having it be out of control, having it be scary, having it be all these things. And so for me to have that data running through my head of this other person who I love, respect, and admire was going through this thing, when I was going through it, it was like, oh, okay, well, this person out there is doing it, so I guess I'm going to do it too. And it just kind of neutralized the potential for, I think, a thought pattern that we can go to. And I think the episode, I called it Nobody Else Has It This Hard, because I think that when we have these extreme cases, right, severe autism is going to give you stories and stories upon stories about the severity of it. And I think it's easy to go to the place of nobody else has it this hard, which is only going to lead us down probably like a little bit of self-pity. And that's not where we'll find any of those things that you just spoke to in terms of fulfillment, contentedness, happiness for you, and of course your children.
I've been there. I've literally said those words to myself in my head and out loud. Yeah. More than once. More than once.
Right? Okay. Well, with that, we're going to wrap this episode and we'll see you on part 2.